In this series of Heart of the Matter, what we've tried to do each week is take an issue out of the headlines and measure the moral dimension to it. Now, picking the issue has been quite easy in 7 weeks, which have seen such major events as the Falklands War and the visit of the Pope to this country. But taking your cue from the news does present some difficulties, because there are some issues that cry out for discussion, which, because they've been around for so long, no longer make the front pages. The world is a busy place, and as I know, the attention span of a newsroom is severely limited. Unemployment is a case in point. Now, this week saw the publication of the latest unemployment figures, yet reaction to that was inevitably swamped by all the drama over the new Royal Prince, the World Cup, and so on. Yet we've just received from BBC Wales an important film which shows how unemployment affects one small community, the village of Glyncorrwg. And after we've seen it, I'll be discussing the issues raised in it with Professor Brian Griffiths, who is a monetarist, an economist, a Christian, and a Welshman. But for the moment, we'll let the film and the people of Glyncorrwg speak for themselves.
We thank the Lord for what we've had. We would be glad if we had some more, but being as times they are so bad, we thank the Lord for what we've had.
You get so depressed sitting at home doing nothing. You're looking for little jobs to do in the house or in the garage or in the shed just to take your mind off things like this, you know.
I get out as soon as possible. A man is not made to be in the house all day long. Perhaps an old age pension, I might, once I'm in done, I'd do that. I go up to church. Occasionally, if the vicar asked me to do a couple of jobs there, I might go up there. Anything to pass the time away.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
You know, the 20s and 30s are coming back to the same now. What they told me about the unemployment situation then is it's going to be exactly the same nowadays.
Morning, Samantha. Morning, Trisha. Morning, Fabian. Morning, Ross.
Hi, Tom.
Morning, Doc.
How are you?
Oh, I think my chest is worse than usual. I think I caught a cold, Doctor. It's full of.
Oh, that's all right. But Winnie's had a cold, has she?
Oh, Winnie's got one as well. I don't know.
Giving it to you.
It's quite possible. I don't know. It goes to my chest straight away, see?
Right,
I
so lean forwards. Big breath. Big breath again. Yeah, you've got some crackles there. Have you started yourself off on the antibiotics?
Yes.
Yeah, well, really, much more important than those antibiotics is simply keeping your morale up. That's more important than anything in this disease.
Well, I want to work, but there's just no work about. There's a lot of people in my position and, you know, no point in moaning and groaning about it, like I say, you know.
I go down to the job centre. If I know there's any work down there, they can't give me nothing to do. So, well, all it is, isn't it?
You know, the thing people now, 41, 51, that's all you got to look forward to is 20 or 30 years, 15 years unemployment. I know if that doesn't break a man, what does?
You know, just before, we used to say, oh, okay, then we'll fight them, boys. But today they tell them, now stop and think. Because this is a fact, we all got to stop and think now, because the fear of God is in everybody.
Unfortunate thing, I feel very sorry, mostly for the youngsters when I get into the dole queue and see it packed out there, and they look very depressed.
The only thing that I say, see, that the youngsters First of all, they've had no work experience. They haven't had an opportunity of having any trade union experience. They haven't got any political experience. I don't want to approach a youngster and say, this is what you should do. I want to approach a youngster and say, look, why have we got a situation where youngsters like you have got no hope of obtaining work in the foreseeable future? Why? Now you've got intelligence. You haven't got the opportunity of applying that intelligence in your work life. So you must apply it to find a solution of why. And let's repeatedly ask this question, why, until we get an answer.
And I pray, Heavenly Father, for the unemployed, especially for the young, for those who have never worked, for those who are desperate for a job but simply can't find one.
We can put the man on the bloody moon. We can transport him back. They can send the man up now in a rocket and bring it back now. Second hand, they send the second hand. We're up now Thursday. We'll see it. Yeah, second hand coming back then. We can spend all this money. And what you must remember, Polaris was modernized, in 1979. Just 78, 79. Just remember what government was there, boys. Yeah. £1 billion. The problem when they say we haven't got any money to invest in industry in this country. There was 6.9 million invested abroad last year.
I want to look at specific words and see how they relate to your own lives. I want to look at deprivation, self-sufficiency, an orderly framework, the basic skills with remarkable tolerance. Now, not back in context with the passage, but as they apply to you. So let's start now with deprivation. Right, Ben.
In Glyncorrwg, we don't have any amenities for any young people or any generation, really, through the old people and young people. We deprive youth clubs, any things to do in the night. You've got to move out the area to do it, to have anything to do at all.
Right, then for the next one then. An orderly framework in relation to your life. Gareth.
Well, when the villages were started, they were built around the mine framework.
Yeah.
And everybody was a miner or something to do with the mine. But when the mines were closed down, the framework just disappeared. Really.
When I left school, it was natural to went to work in a pit. But I just started in the oven. And that was that. How can you say it? Closing pits down? I didn't need to close pits down. They're closing them down. This valley had 5 when I started work. We haven't got one here now, a private mine in Glyncorrwg, that's all they've got. And I mean, Labour, just as bad as the Tories, they started to close it on the road bin, so you can't blame one or the other. And if the Wyndham Western was to close, I'm not going to say it will close. If it was to close, who's going to have me? Like, who's going to have me when I'm 40? The valleys are dead. Nothing in the Afan Valley. Nothing for my children. So I just well pack up and go and start a new life somewhere else.
Good morning, removals.
Good morning. Come in.
Oh, well, naturally, you want to make somebody feel sad. I've lived here all my life. I mean, you're bound to feel sad about a place like that. I mean, it's driving all the young couples out of the village. I can't see no future in it.
Oh, well, it's my last pay, yeah. Yeah. Australia.
It was a lovely day. The white clouds were drifting across the high blue sky. The hills lifted towards the rim of the Black Mountains, faintly etched in the far distance. An irony said to me, and to this day I can hear the sad undertones of his voice, "This country is finished. Come with me to Australia. I sold my house and I can just manage to pay my debts and make the passage money. My house cost me £600. They give me 150 for it. There's no hope for us here. You and I, between us, can do better for ourselves in a new country than here. But all that seems left to us is to rot in idleness.
Quite a lot going from the valleys.
Oh, yes. Well, there's nothing here, is there? Nothing is coming from. No. Too long and we'll be off ourselves.
When do you fly?
23rd of November. 9 o'clock in the night.
David, I said, I hate to see you leave us, but if this is how you feel about it, then you must go. And I wish you all the luck in the world. For myself, I'm going to stay here and fight it out. You're an older man than I am, and you've lost your home. And it must seem too difficult to go on living here with the old memories. But if all the old men leave, who is to continue the fight? And I can't bear the thought of seeing them win over us. I said this in a spirit of no bravado, for my impulse is what to go with him. When I returned home and told my father our conversation, he said, I think you made the right decision, but it'll be a long fight. And that was 50 years ago, and the fight is still going on now.
Rather than be unemployed, I visited Canada, where I obtained an offer of employment. This employment is now subject to me satisfying the immigration criteria, and as those people who have tried to emigrate to Canada will realise this is very difficult. I'm very worried about what's going to happen. Although at present I'm on an even mind, but I think within a few months, if I don't get employment, I'm going to start getting depressed, I would think.
When I was made redundant, I knew a couple of weeks before that I was being made redundant. But it didn't actually hit me until the day that I had my notice. It's the same with the old age pensioners. They give them a raise, and before they get their raise, the old age pensioners is gone.
I think that retirement should be brought down to 55, and then the younger element brought in off the dole pills.
The young people are searching for something they can't find, and that's work.
The kids that's getting married, what chance have they got? Higher mortgages, VAT on this, VAT on that. And up goes the gas bills, up goes the electric bills.
I think people feel that they can't change anything, and what's the point?
People that are working are very complacent. They feel that it can't happen to them. But the way things are going, it could very well happen, and in the near future.
We are better off. I mean, we are a lot better off than my mother and father were. We've got things that my father never dreamed he could have. We get our holidays every year, we've got a car, we've got a colour television, we are quite well off. But everybody should be better off. They've all got the right to work to be able to get these things. And when you take people's right to work away, what's left? I get depressed about people being unemployed. And I don't know how I would react if it did affect us personally. There could be two reactions. It could be that we get very depressed and feel, what's the point, and don't do anything about it. Or the other reaction would be that we'd get angry and want to do something about it.
I do feel powerless about it. I really don't know what we can do about it. I'm disappointed in all the parties at the moment. I've never been very politically minded, but usually you do see someone standing out as a leader, and I just don't see anybody at this present time. Nobody inspires me. I've worked in Cymer now 13 years, and there's a great bond there between people, and I'll be sorry to see it close.
In the past, Terry and I have often thought of leaving Glyncorrwg. at different times and decided for one reason or another that we wanted to stay. And that's a lot different to decide yourself that you want to stay than have it decided for you that you must go.
No, I like living in Glyncorrwg because I like the community spirit that's here. Everybody knows each other, and I think if I went somewhere else, I'd find it very difficult to make friends.
I got nothing to smile about, boy. I've been here 40 years and I don't go from here now. It's too late, boy. Too late to move on now.
We don't call it unemployment today, you know, we got different words today. If a man becomes unemployed, it's redundancy. And if a colliery or an industry isn't paying, and this was a word we heard often, if an industry isn't viable, oh, damn that. Greatest sin that ever was committed by man. Never mind about what it was producing or anything. You know, if a colliery isn't viable, see, you can't expect it to keep on. You know? And they can present such a reasonable argument, you know. But why isn't things viable? And then they tell us, if we ask why, well, you know, you have demanded too much wages. You know, and if you want to return to the good times, now where the hell was the good times, Sal? Where were they, Molly? Not in our lifetime. No, where were they, you know? They tell us about the good times, the good old days, you know. Good God, I never had any good times. The only time I haven't got corns in my hand is now. See? My hands are lovely now, look like a woman.
Well, I think that there have been achievements in the past. Although things aren't as good as they should be, I think that the National Health Service in this country is better than many other countries. But what does worry me is the cutbacks now.
Oh, Brian, only one of yours. Yeah, right. Well, anyway, I'll leave it to you about any following up. I didn't shoot you. The last 10, 15 years, they've been dismantling the whole apparatus of food supplements, good cheap school meals, school milk, and so on, that was set up in the 1930s as a result of the disastrous effects on children in those days of not getting enough food of the right kind to eat because they were so poor. At that time, the child allowance for the children in unemployed families was 2 shillings a week. When I first heard about that as a student in the 1940s, I was absolutely horrified. How the hell do you bring up a child, clothe and feed and house it on 2 shillings a week? The allowance now for the child of an unemployed family is £1.07 a day. How the hell do you feed and clothe a child on £1.07 a day?
Oh, no. Do you remember about 10 years ago we had a meeting of parents in the village where the youth employment officer came up and spoke to parents and said, there are some of you whose children will never know what it is to do a day's work. We just didn't believe him.
Never had a kettle broth, have you? Well, kettle broth is bread cut up, hot water, pepper and salt. And this family used to have kettle broth, and they used to say the prayer, see? We thank the Lord for what we've had. We would be glad if we had some more, but being as times they are so bad, we thank the Lord for what we've had. Kettle broth.
We're all looking for work, we all need work, we all want work. I worked for 26 years of my life, I got another 25 as far as I'm concerned, but work left. And I want to work for those 25 years, not sit in the house for 25 years being unemployed. So the system has got to change altogether. Well, we've got to change the system. Unless we don't change the system, that's what we'll have. 25 years unemployment.
When I think back about the fight that the trade unions put years and years ago, when I started work, I was working with an old bloke, and he used to tell me the fight that the unions had to get established. Well, now, slowly and surely, they're crushing the unions. We're making the likes of me and other people redundant. There's not the money going into the unions. So the fight that all our forefathers have put up is getting weaker and weaker and weaker. The strength is going from the unions. Basically, we're not the fighters that our forefathers were.
I'm just thinking about the time when Ramsay MacDonald visited Aber and Blaengwynfi, Mary. He was Prime Minister then.
Oh, yes. They actually carried him right through the village on a chair. You could swear that the Messiah had come.
Yeah.
Remember the song that they had for us, the youngsters to sing?
Ramsay, Ramsay shouted.
Ramsay, Ramsay shouted. Don't be shy about it. Labour Day is bound to come. We cannot live without it. On one labour and to glory, 'twill be told in song and story. As we fought in Aber, Ramsay is the man.
Right down, don't clap, Rod. It'll give me a pain there. You know, the enthusiasm and the loyalty that that man had from not so much us then, because we was kiddies in those days, but our parents, you know,
Yeah, but the point that we mustn't forget is this, is it? That at that time, I can understand those people being enthusiastic because they really had every confidence in the man at that stage. It was in later years, in a few years later, we realised what we are talking about now, the letdown to the working classes that Ramsay MacDonald caused.
I'm more angry now, I think, than I was in the 1930s. See, because this is repeating itself. A period of mass unemployment. Now, the 1930s have repeated itself.
It's frightening to think what the future will hold for anybody. More so the young people. And I hope and pray to God that somebody will do something, because it can't go on like this. Desperation is setting in everywhere.
I'd like to see my children doing well at school. But I would like to think that if they did well and they wanted to work in this area, that there would be work here for them. It's unfair to expect people to move to the work. It would be difficult for us to move, because if there isn't a future in the area, who would buy a house? They go through school, a lot of children, not expecting to have a job at the end of it. They don't feel that they've got a right to a job. Now, I think every child should have the right to work. Glyncorrwg really sprung up around the collieries that were here, and the collieries now have gone, and the country should have felt then some sort of responsibility to replace that work for the people.
Oh yeah, it was a big decision. If they want a job, they'll have to travel. So if we're going to make a break, we just all go together, so that we'll be all together. We've thought it over for 18 months, but now it will all come. You look back and say, are you doing the right thing? But, well, if we don't make the break, we'll never know.
Glyncorrwg, well, it's a close-knit community. I mean, everybody knows everybody, and if you need anything, well, they're always prepared to help you.
Well, it's home, innit? You know, wherever you go, it'll always, well, it's a terrible letdown, innit?
Brian Griffiths, you've seen that film as an economist, as a monetarist, as a Welshman, as a Christian. How torn are you?
Well, I was very torn because I think the film is about terrible human suffering and tragedy. And when you hear people on the film saying, and one man of my age saying, for the next 20 years, all I have to look forward to is life on the dole, I mean, that is despair. Or when you see some young people saying there, where can I get a job? You know, that's a terrible situation to be in. And as a Christian, I feel particularly that any involuntary unemployment is a particular tragedy to me, because I think man created in the image of God has a dignity as a human being. And that kind of situation is an affront to the dignity of man made in God's image.
What's happened at Glyncorrwg is that something that is central to our whole way of